A Lamassu is an Assyrian protective deity, often depicted as having a human's head, a body of an ox or a lion, and bird's wings. In some writings, it is portrayed to represent a female deity. A less frequently used name is Shedu, which refers to the male counterpart of a Lamassu. The Lamassu or Lamassu represent the zodiac's parent stars or constellations. Iconography. In art, Lamassu were depicted as hybrids, either winged bulls or lions with the head of a human male. The motif of a winged animal with a human head is common to the Near East, first recorded in Ebla around 3000 BCE. The first distinct Lamassu motif appeared in Assyria during the reign of Tiglath-Pileser. Disambiguation needed, as a symbol of power. The Assyrians typically prominently place Lamassu at the entrances of cities and palaces. From the front they appear to stand, and from the side, walk. Notable representations include those at the Gate of All Nations at Persepolis in Iran, the British Museum in London, the Musée du Louvre in Paris, the National Museum of Iraq in Baghdad, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and the Oriental Institute, Chicago. A winged bull with the head of a bearded man appears on the logo of the United States Forces, Iraq. Terminology. The Lamassu or Lamassu represent the zodiac's parent stars, or constellations. They are depicted as protective deities because they encompass all life within them. In the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh they are depicted as physical deities as well, which is where the Lamassu iconography originates. These deities could be microcosms of their microcosmic zodiac, parent star, or constellation. Although Lamassu had a different iconography and portrayal in Sumerian culture, the terms Lamassu, Alad, and Shedu evolved throughout the Assyro-Akkadian culture from the Sumerian culture to denote the Assyrian winged man-bull symbol and statues during the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Female Lamassus were called Absassu. The motif of the Assyrian winged man-bull called Alad Lamu and Lamassu interchangeably is not the Lamassu or Alad of Sumerian origin, which were depicted with different iconography. These monumental statues were called Alad Lamu or Lamassu, which meant protective spirit. In Hittite, the Sumerian form D-Lama is used both in name for the so-called tutelary deity, identified in certain later texts with an aura, and a title, given to similar protective gods. In the Enuma Elish they are both symbolized as the zodiac's parent stars, or constellations, and as physical deities, as well as was in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Mythology. The Lamassu is a celestial being from Mesopotamian mythology bearing a human head, bull's body, sometimes with the horns and the ears of a bull, and wings. It appears frequently in Mesopotamian art. The Lamassu and Shedu were household protective spirits of the common Babylonian people, becoming associated later as royal protectors. Were placed as sentinels at the entrances. The Akkadians associated the god Papsukal with Lamassu and the god Isun with Shedu. To protect houses, the Lamassu were engraved in clay tablets, which were then buried under the door's threshold. They were often placed as a pair at the entrance of palaces. At the entrance of cities, they were sculpted in colossal size, and placed as a pair, one at each side of the door of the city. That generally had doors in the surrounding wall, each one looking towards one of the cardinal points. The ancient Jewish people were influenced by the iconography of Assyrian culture. The prophet Ezekiel wrote about a fantastic being made up of aspects of a human being, a lion, an eagle and a bull. Later, in the early Christian period, the four Gospels were ascribed to each of these components. When it was depicted in art, this image was called the tetramorph. In modern culture, the British 10th Army, which operated in Iraq and Iran in 1942–1943, adopted the Lamassu as its insignia. Lamassu, Sikh, and Shedu are two distinct types of good-aligned creatures in the role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. Lamassu also appear in the Magic: The Gathering trading card game as the white card-hunted Lamassu in the Ravnica City of Guilds expansion, as well as the white card Venerable Lamassu found in the Khans of Tarkir expansion. A bull with a man's head is found among the creatures that make up Aslan's army in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. He appears at the stone table, challenging the White Witch with a great bellowing voice. In the film Alexander, Lamassu is seen at the Ishtar Gate in Babylon. In the Disney movie Aladdin, a gold Lamassu can be found in the scene where Aladdin and Abu enter the cave in the desert to find the lamp. In the Games Workshop Miniatures wargame, Warhammer Fantasy Battle, the Lamassu was a mount for the Chaos Dwarf army. It has since returned as part of the Storm of Magic expansion release. A Lamassu briefly appears in the Fable Haven series. Gallery. Cuneiform writing on the back of a Lamassu in the University of Chicago Oriental Institute. Modern impression of Achaemenid's cylinder seal, 5th century BCE. A winged solar disk legitimizes the Persian king who subdues two rampant Mesopotamian Lamassu figures. Assyrian Hall, Musée du Louvre, Brooklyn Museum Archives, Goodyear Archival Collection.